What's going on, guys? It's Greg here. Just wanted to do a quick video about something that's overlooked in a lot of people's bug out bags and survival bags, get home bags, and also in your preps that you should have at your house or at your bug out location. And that is just simply a face mask. Okay, and face mask is very useful for a variety of reasons. Um, you may need to conceal your identity from, potentially hostile people. And, those hostile people could be different, groups of society. Like, most people associate face masks with being something bad, because a lot of criminals use face masks to conceal their identity so that way they don't get caught by the police. And then, so face masks have a bad reputation, but in certain situations they're very important to have, because it, it can conceal your identity, especially if it's a grid down situation, a long-term SHTF. You may be dealing with different people and you want to conceal your identity. So a good example of this during rule of law is a lot of counter-terrorist units and anti-drug units that do raids and assaults on terrorist compounds or different criminal drug houses and things like that. They usually wear a face mask. If you watch a lot of anti-terrorist groups, anti-terrorist law enforcement agencies, especially in Europe, a lot of agencies in Eastern Europe, they do a lot of raids on the Russian mafia and different types of, organized crime, and it's important for them to conceal their identity with a face mask so that way, after they do the raid and they arrest people, what they don't want to have happen is one of these guys that they arrested, especially if they're a powerful drug dealer or a powerful mafia guy, they may go after their family or attack them on the street or something like that because they know what you look like, and that's just during rule of law. So, here you could see this is my property, and this is an area that I would patrol, during a grid down situation, an SHTF power failure. It doesn't even have to be a long-term power failure. I'm going to be patrolling this property, with my firearm. I'm going to be walking around patrolling the perimeter to see if there's anything unusual around my property, because I don't want to wait until a threat comes right up to my house. I want to be able to intercept the threat before it comes up to my residence. And also it can help gather intelligence. If there was some activity here around my property, I can see if there were people. I can look for tracks, I can look for signs, I can see if there's any unusual signs, spoor, SPOOR, spoor. If you're knowledgeable about tracking, then you'll know what spoor is. But I'm going to be patrolling my property during a grid down situation or SHTF, and I'm going to want to conceal my identity, because if, let's say I'm doing a patrol and I run into somebody and they're trespassing on my property, I don't want them to know what I look like, in case in the future I run into them somewhere, or they may have friends, and they may put a hit out on me or something like that, or they may try to attack me when I'm in town, so I want to basically conceal my identity, especially if I have to detain somebody, if they're trying to break into my house, or if I'm on a patrol and I'm patrolling my property. If I have to detain someone, or use, defensive, use lawful force to defend myself or defend my property, I want to conceal my identity. I don't want them to see what I look like. And, just so you guys can see, this is just for winter time, this one right here, but, this is a face mask is something that you should have, in your bug out bag, in your get home bag, not just if you're patrolling property, but also if you're bugging out, or if you're trying to get home from work and you work far away from home and you're trying to, you're in a get home situation. um, you're going to want to conceal your identity, so this way people can't remember who you are. If, let's say, you're moving through an area and you have your survival gear on you, you may run into a group of thugs, or you may run into some type of a gang or a marauder group, or whatever situation is. You don't want them to remember what you look like. You want to keep your identity concealed so people can't remember you. And same thing if you're patrolling your property, during SHTF or WRL, grid down situation. If you're patrolling your property, you're patrolling around your neighborhood. It could be your community. If, let's say, you and your community get together and you start patrolling and doing patrols around your neighborhood, you're going to want to have all your guys wearing a face mask. This way, if you run into somebody, God forbid you have to use force, or you have to detain someone, or if you get into a firefight, if, let's say, it's a prolonged grid down situation and you get into a firefight, you may encounter a group of marauders. There may be a group of, like, 10 or 20 marauders, and they're going around door to door trying to steal supplies and rape and pillage and so forth. They may be going around from community to community. You want to basically make sure that you're prepared, and if you're doing any kind of security patrols, you want to make sure you're protecting your identity, because if that group of marauders, if they remember what you look like, they may try to jump you or attack you when you're out in town. Let's say you get into a firefight and you scare them off, or whatever the situation is, you scare them off, they're going to remember you, or they may have friends and they're going to tell their friends what you look like, and they're going to say, oh, I know this guy Greg, he's well prepared, he's got a big group of friends with him, they're all well armed, they have food and water, they're well stocked, he lives in such and such location, and they're going to send a group out to get you, and they're going to try to take your stuff. This is a reality. This isn't, that's what criminals do. They're going to remember where you live, they're going to remember your supplies, they're going to remember who you are, and they're going to try to come back and get your stuff. So you should always have a face mask so you conceal your identity. They're not going to remember what you look like. And if you run into them outside of your property, let's say you're out in the town, and you're bartering with people, or you're going to get supplies and resources in town. Let's say you have to get more gas or food or water, or you have to go to a National Guard supply area to get some supplies, because that's what would happen in a grid down situation. The National Guard would have, like, stations where they give out MREs and so forth. If, let's say, you're going out to one of those areas, if you had a skirmish with some type of person, or a marauder group, or group of burglars, whatever, and they remember what you look like, they could potentially attack you. So it's smart to wear a face mask. You don't want bad guys to know what you look like. So and also try to cover up any kind of tattoos or any kind of unique markings on your body, or traits that you may have, like piercings or tattoos especially, so this way people can't identify who you are. And it's not for criminal reasons. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. You just want to protect yourself. You don't want to be in a situation where you had to defend your property or defend your family, and some crazy dude remembers what you look like, or they remember what your security group looks like, and they may retreat and then come back and try to attack you guys when you least expect it, or when you're away from your compound or away from your bug out location. So having a face mask is really a good idea, and also if you're in a get home situation and you're trying to move away from a populated area. Let's say you work in a city and you're trying to get home, having a face mask will help you to conceal yourself. And if you run into any kind of groups or any bad guys, gangs, whatever, they're not going to remember what you look like. So if you have to use force to defend yourself, they're not going to be able to know what you look like, so they can't come and get revenge on you. And another thing too is if you need to hide from rogue law enforcement, which I would say is definitely a threat after SHTF or a prolonged grid down situation. If we're talking about a prolonged grid down situation, there may be a tyrannical government, or there may be a tyrannical, local sheriff, or there may be a tyrannical, government agency, and they're trying to, impose certain things on the people that are not constitutional or illegal or immoral, whatever the situation is. You're definitely going to want to conceal your identity in that situation. If you're dealing with a tyrannical government, tyrannical law enforcement, or some type of rogue law enforcement agency that's just not really following the law anymore. They're just kind of doing whatever they think is right and imposing their will on the people in the area. You definitely want to conceal your identity in that case, so this way you don't get detained and taken into a prison camp or something like that. I mean, if we're talking about like really conspiracy type stuff, like FEMA camps and all that, you definitely want to conceal your identity in that case. If you have a group of survivors, you definitely want to conceal your identity, so you don't get rounded up and taken into a FEMA camp. But that's obviously less likely to happen. More likely is you may have to deal with a burglar or some type of group of marauders, some bad guys, either at your bug out location or your bug in location, and you're going to want to conceal your identity, so they can't get revenge on you, so they don't know who you are. If God forbid you have to use force, while you're doing some type of a patrol around your property or around the community. And then same thing if you're getting home, if you're trying to escape, you don't want people to see what you look like. Just throw one of these masks on and people won't know who you are. If you run into a group of bad guys, let's say you're moving through an area that has a high crime rate and it's kind of a bad area, a high crime area, you can throw on one of these masks and people aren't going to recognize, who you are. So if something happens, then they won't be able to remember you later on and get revenge on you. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I got more videos coming soon, so I hope you stay tuned. I'd like to start doing some live streams as well. So take care, God bless, and enjoy the weekend and enjoy the beautiful fall foliage here. If you're in the Northeast or anywhere where there's fall foliage, it's a nice time to be out. So take care and God bless.